A New Year's resolution for your sex life? Say what?
Yes. Every year between Christmas and New Year's, Carissa and I sit down and talk about where we're going, what we want to achieve, what we want to make for our goal. What do we want to, that's really the question. What do we want to achieve this year? And we write it down.
And we don't call it our New Year's resolution session, although that's kind of what it is if you look at the tradition of, setting New Year's resolutions, but we call it the focus for the new year or habits for the new year. And we do that on purpose because we want to focus on the behavioral aspect of our resolutions.
Yeah. So we generally go to a coffee shop or, take a little date. Sometimes we do it in the car, but we do spend focused time. I think that's really important. Spend focused time talking about where we're going.
Yes.
Just because designing your life doesn't happen by accident. If you want an outcome, you have to actually design it.
Right.
So design where you want to go. After prayer, of course, but where are you going? Where do you want to go? And then start putting in goals. This is what I want to achieve.
And yes, we do recommend setting a habit or a goal for your sex life this year. You can even break it up into quarters. But here's why. There are two crucial elements to our planning sessions. The first one is setting holistic goals. Okay, so focusing on all aspects of your life, and we'll get into those here in this short podcast. The other aspect of that is making sure that you are clear about how you want to be supported in your New Year's resolutions or your goals, your habits.
Yeah, because if you're not clear, your spouse won't know just automatically how they need to be supported. They'll do it their style, but their style might not work. And we'll come back to a personal story, how I tried to support her and it didn't really work very well. And it's not suggested the way I did it.
But then we remedied it and it worked pretty well.
But it was my style.
Sure.
And without you letting me know that wasn't working, I would just have kept on doing it and probably making you more and more frustrated. So we'll get into that. But what we want to talk about is holistically, how do we set goals and how you should set goals too. We think that you should set it in categories. So holistically, meaning body, mind, spirit. What in every single category could you work on to unlock other areas of your life? So we kind of like to ask a question. I think it's in our card deck, one of our card deck foundations, right?
Yes. What's one habit that if I added it today would make the biggest positive impact on our life or marriage? And then vice versa. What's one habit that if we eliminated it today would make the biggest positive impact on our life or marriage?
That was such well said, But it's a really good question. Asking yourself that, so for instance, body, mind, spirit, right? Holistic goals. If I worked on this for my body, what would unlock, what would make the biggest positive change in my life?
So we have body, mind, spirit. We also have relationships, ministry and career, and finances. And we recommend setting specific goals in each of these areas. So we'll start with body. As you can, guess, that's where your typical New Year's resolutions come into play, like losing weight, but not just losing weight, but getting your body healthy. It's your temple, exercise, but also things like skin, hair, teeth.
Yeah. Well, okay. You need to probably make a goal about it if you're always, talking about it in a negative way.
Yep.
Or thinking about it in a negative way. Your spouse will appreciate it.
Yep.
Just because if you're always talking about, I just hate my skin, whatever, there are things you could do about it. Go to a dermatologist. I used to have terrible acne and I went to a dermatologist and it really helped me. It was funny. Just cut out sugar, wash your face once a day, make sure you put on good moisturizer.
There you go.
Fixed it. And drink lots of water.
And this is also the area where you would set goals for things like, we talked about teeth. Like I actually did that year before last. One of my goals in this area was to floss my teeth every day. But I actually set it like this. I floss 1 tooth per day. Now, when I actually get in there and floss a tooth, I'm probably going to floss the whole row of teeth or my whole mouth. But it worked, like just setting that goal.
Yeah.
It's the concept of tiny habits.
Well, it's about designing how you'll implement a habit. And she's talking about one that's well designed. Not all habits are well designed.
True.
But that it's easy. I made that habit pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And sometimes I only did 1 tooth. And other times, most of the time, you'll just do, the top row or bottom row. But I mean, how often do we feel the pressure to do the whole mouth?
Yeah.
And we just avoid it for 2 months because we feel like we need to do like the whole mouth. So,
yeah.
But designing habits is a really good way. And we'll get more, farther into this later on.
The next section is your mind. So setting goals for your mind. This is where you're going to put goals that have to do with what you want to learn this year. Maybe a language, a skill, school, going back to school, or you want to maybe learn a new trade. But this is where you're going to put all of those habits related to your mind.
Mind is an important one. And there are so many different ways you can go. If you're terrible at time management, why don't you work on that? Why don't you get a book on time management, or get a book on, some people say, I just had someone tell me that they're terrible at focusing. Well, there are things that you could do. Focusing is a muscle. So if you start working on it, and there are books that you could get the book, I think Deep Work talks about it. Simple meditation helps on that. There's a lot of different things that you could do.
Podcasts, if you're not a reader, listening to podcasts.
Right. If you say you're not a reader, well, start reading. Then you're a reader. But there are lots of things you can do. Challenge yourself. Where do you feel the most, pressure to change, or guilt for not being a certain way, or, or maybe insecurity in a certain place? Focus on that.
The next area is spirit. And spirit, this is where you're going to set goals related to your relationship with the Lord, and anything having to do with your walk with Him. So the Word, you might maybe you want to read a new devotional this year, or maybe you want to have more quality prayer time or a more consistent prayer life. A lot of people will say they pray every day, but maybe it's not at a consistent time of the day, and they want to have a more consistent prayer life in the morning or in the evening. It's also where, you'll set goals having to do with your Bible reading and digging into the Word.
And let's say that you have an amazing prayer life and Bible reading time. Maybe even ask yourself, where do I feel, hesitant to do in the spirit realm? So maybe you have a difficult time. You're really good at, this kind of stuff like prayer and reading the Bible, but you have a really hard time sharing it. So 1 Peter 3:15 says, "Be ready always to have an answer for every man that asketh a reason for the hope that is in you." Maybe you need to work on having that answer and then being willing to share it. So find some goals in that spirit area that you could really work. And if you did this one thing, would give you the most fulfillment or grow you the most.
Yeah.
So focus on that. And
we actually we'll be sharing our own habits for the new year at our next monthly live date night. So sneak peek. But one of the habits that we've done for a few years actually is picking a topic that we want to study per quarter or per year, and then studying that together, because it not only strengthens our spirit, it's a bit, topic from the Bible, but it strengthens our marriage because we're connecting on that level.
I really enjoy studying things with her too, because we never know what we're going to face in life. And if she's prepared and I'm prepared, or we get into that conversation with someone and we both study that together, it's amazing. I mean, that's really what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff we've studied together for a long time, and we, bounce stuff back and forth, and it's a dynamic, fun conversation. So doing that with your spouse really does build the bond, but also makes you a more effective team.
So speaking of relationship, the next area is your relationship and your intimacy. And yes, this is where your New Year's resolution for your sex life comes in. But not just your sex life, your marriage. Focus on building new habits in your marriage.
Yes. And this, I think this is when you really can do that, like to have this conversation about what you want to focus on while you're driving, if you don't have kids, or, but start talking about, what you would like first. We have to be assertive first.
Yeah.
But then we could start focusing on, okay, so this is an area we need to change. Hopefully you've been listening to these podcasts for a while or these videos for a while. Okay, so we know the area we want to change. Well, what could we start doing or practicing to work on that, to grow in this area? So maybe it's maybe intimacy. Well, okay, the card deck we came out with, Sexpectations. This is a shameless plug because
Totally.
we've seen it help a lot of people. We regularly pull it out because we change.
Yep.
But going over that stuff, asking those questions.
Yes. For those who don't know, Sexpectations is a card deck with 52 questions for your sex life. And not just your sex intercourse life, but also the way you show affection and the way you intimately connect.
Yes. They're hard to find. Well, we'll link them here in the description. But they're hard to find on Amazon because they're flagged. So just type Sexpectations, dear young married couple in Google, and you'll find them easily.
Yes, they're in the sex and sexual health and wellness section of Amazon. So they don't show up in an all categories search.
Yeah.
But anyway, set goals for your sex life. A goal could be like having a 1 week intimacy spree, or it could, even if it's not a full week, it could be like 3 days in a row. You want to have sex 3 days in a row, at least once a quarter.
Or both partners, deciding that they're going to initiate. Generally, there's one initiator, or the one that typically
primary
does.
Initiator.
Primary. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, take turns, maybe, set the challenge like, okay, the next 3 days, it's your turn. The next 3 days or 2 days, my turn, or whatever it is. Just put that out there and make that a goal, maybe.
Yes. And also, if you want to grow in your sex life, you could find books that you want to read to strengthen your sex life. We have lots of recommendations on our Instagram and on our website. And several of the prior podcasts talk about various books that you could read to strengthen your sex life.
Right. But
set goals for your sex life, for your marriage, to strengthen that. So many people just get stuck on like losing weight, and that's great. I mean, if you really need to, and it'll help your health. But really, there's so much more reward in strengthening your marriage and your sex life. So focus on that.
Yeah. The next one is ministry career. How are you going to work on your ministry? How are you going to work on your career? Both of these are gigantic.
So the question to ask for this one is like, who are we going to reach this year, and how are we going to do that? So maybe, God has called you to reach children. Is that through teaching Sunday school, or is that through a different kind of ministry that it's not very typical? And especially in light of a global pandemic, is that going to be through, online avenues, videos, apps, social media? How are you going to reach the people that God has called you to reach? And oftentimes, how are you going to do that together with your spouse? I mean, you might be called to reach different people, but oftentimes you're called to reach people together, because one can put 1,000 to flight and two can put 10,000 to flight. So think of your exponential power to reach people. So think of that in your ministry. It may not be your typical idea of ministry, but start with that question. Who are we called to reach, and how are we going to reach them?
Right. So good. And then also with the career, because we kind of combine these, for a lot of people, their spouse might not be able to like partner with them in their career because, they go and come back. In this, we can. Yeah. But for a lot of people, that's not really an option. So you have to ask the second question that we're getting at is, how can we support each other doing that?
True.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, how can I support you? There's a lot to be said here.
So if your goal is like to, go up a level at your job, maybe you want to promote to a management position or a senior leadership position. How can your spouse support you in doing that? Could it be that your spouse is going to, quiz you on the things that you need to know in order to pass an exam to get there? Are they going to pack your lunches so that you can, get out earlier because you have to be there earlier for that position? Just talk with each other on how you can best be supported in attaining those goals for your career.
Yeah. And I think it's so good to set career goals. For us, for entrepreneurs, especially, to have this sit-down conversation. I mean, we literally have a sit-down conversation every week.
Every Friday. It's our weekly planning session.
Yeah, planning out our week, what we're doing, what we're posting, who we're interviewing, what we're doing.
Yep.
So, but, for people who don't have something as involved as this together, it could be a very valuable conversation for you.
Even if it's just like once a month, but especially this big overarching conversation at the beginning of the year.
And remember too, even if you go to a job, you're managing your energy too. What are your energy goals? For working a hard job, right? How are you going to take care of yourself through that? And so that could be something that maybe you're not growing, or you're not growing in your business because you've reached the top, but you're absolutely maxed. You're working on that. So maybe you're physical, but maybe you need to ask for other things in the career aspect.
How can I delegate
and
bring more people on the team, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So the next one would be finances. This is another important one. I hate using that word over and over, but these are all important categories. But finances, I think some people think that we don't really need a budget, because this would be a good goal to have. Budget because we don't have enough money to have a budget, or maybe we have enough money, we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, but budgeting gives you so much more freedom, regardless of how much money you have.
I have to agree with that.
Budget, yeah.
Like we recently had a kind of a shift in the way we budgeted, and it really did bring a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
We always had a budget, but it changed for us. And
yeah,
I would encourage you guys to revisit that conversation. It really does help. And you can, if you have your big dream goals in place, because this is kind of talking about our year, right? But our big goal dreams in place, it's easy to get behind a budget.
Totally. And your financial goals don't have to be just about budgeting and income or revenue if you have a business, but it can also be like giving goals that you have. Maybe you want to give more this year, or give to a certain group or a certain missionary. And so you're going to have that conversation at this sit down meeting. It can also be, if you have debt, it could be debt payoff goals. If you have a business, one thing that's always in our planning session is creative write-off ideas. And so what are things that the business does need and that we could get a twofer, we could catch two butterflies with one net if we purchase this, this year, and then we got to write that off for the business, but it would also help us in our ministry or in our household.
Right.
So,
yeah. And if you did that, you could also kill two birds with one stone.
But we don't like talking about killing.
So, we would really encourage you guys, sit down or drive or do something. I guess you sit down and drive at the same time.
We make fun of each other because we always say, sit down.
It's our way of saying, get yourself into a mindful place to talk about these things.
Anytime we want to have a serious conversation or a meeting, we always say, babe, we really need to sit down and talk about
and
blah,
we kind of laugh when we do that too.
Yeah.
Sit down. That's a part of our, it means intentionality.
Exactly. A focused time.
Yeah. So do that. Sit down with your, now you guys are going to be listening on our podcast and on our
anytime we
YouTube,
say sit down.
That's what we mean.
Yep.
Probably laugh at us from now on. We shouldn't have let that cat out of the bag. But do it, guys. Do it. Goals are immensely important.
Yes.
They really are. We've done them for years and years and years together.
Yes.
And it's really insane when you start hitting those goals. It's like, whoa, that's crazy.
It is. Yeah. So, keep track of them. It's cool. We have a folder on our computer that has our focus areas for the last several years, and it's neat to go back.
Yeah. I was just doing that couple of days ago, looking at 2017.
Nice.
Looking at you should read it. There's a really great book by Michael Hyatt called Living Forward, I believe it is.
Was that one of the books on
Yeah,
2017?
and I was reading my obituary that I wrote for myself inside my goals. And you know, it's really interesting looking at where you've come and where your mind was and the goals you've achieved. It's really fantastic. So
Totally.
we would encourage you to do this.
Yes. So after you've written your goals, that last piece is just to ask each other, how can I support you in meeting this goal? And then write that down next to each item, how I can be supported. And see if that's agreeable with your spouse, if they can support you in that way. Because it might surprise you. For instance,
one time early in our marriage, Chris expressed the desire to become healthier and eat better.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took it upon myself to help her with this endeavor.
It wasn't quite what I had in mind.
Right. So anytime she would eat, and I'm women everywhere like shaking their heads, but every time she would eat like kind of like a snack or not even really snacks, more like sweets, like during the holidays, like because she would go in and be like, I have to cut back on eating all the breads and baked goods. Oh my word. And like talk about it. So then when we got there and I saw her eat, I'm like,
he'd give me an
you
eye.
had just talked about this sort of thing.
Or he'd even ask me out loud at the beginning of our marriage, like, is that in line with your goal? Like, it was so embarrassing. So finally, once he actually asked how I could be supported, how he can best support me in that goal, I told him how you can best support me is I would love to look at healthy recipes together. I would love to cook dinner together and grocery shop together. And actually be focused on picking the right foods together in the pre-planning stages. Man, that helped our family a ton. Now we eat differently entirely as a family because of him asking that question in a different way.
And I feel like this is an area that we've grown in over the last like 5 years.
Yes.
But it's a very important thing. You have to talk about this stuff and ask that important question. How can I support you?
So we're going to be diving into all of this in more detail. This will actually be a freebie that we give at Monthly Live Date Night, which is a template for setting your New Year's habits and your focus for the new year. We're also going to share our own New Year's habits focus for the new year. So Monthly Live Date Night is January 15th. That's a Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific. And we hope you'll join us. You can click the link in the show notes for more. We're also going to be doing writing your marriage mission statement. It's going to be a great time.
Yeah. Hope to see you guys there. Do it. It's going to be amazing.